Namaste, and welcome to our continuing series, Essays on the Gita with our beloved Ranga. Today we are on page 23, The Human Disciple. It is typical again of the pragmatic man.
In the previous paragraphs, Srimdo has been very insistent on the fact that Arjuna is not a mental man, he is a man of practical vitality and he is ready to receive the higher knowledge, the spiritual knowledge, but he is not yet, not even a mental man. He is a man of action, he is a Kshatriya, and his action is the most important for him. But he is not a mental man, he is not philosophic, and he is not a little bit of morality is probably there in him because that comes in later on. But he is not a thinker. That's the important thing that Srimdo is stressing all the time. And in the para that we are going to read now, again he stresses that aspect, that Arjuna is not a thinker, but a practical man with practical values in the physical world. Why is Srimdo insisting so much on this? To stress the fact that Gita is not theory. It is something that has to be applied in life. That's why he goes on stressing this. It is something very, because there is detailed description of how you go about towards the perfection that you want. Okay? So
My concern is the last sentence of the previous.
Okay.
Because Sri Aurobindo speaks about a terrific and unparalleled slaughter, a monstrous civil war.
Yes.
It seems very appropriate today.
That's right. So what's your concern? Can you formulate it?
Well, I'm concerned about America and the evils that they have done in the world with biochemical laboratories, which now appear in Ukraine. That's argued, of course, but the Russian state that is definitely there.
America is a country which is very practical in its way of looking at things, and it practices politics to the full. Okay? So, yes, many of their actions have not been very moral, that's true, but the law of karma will operate and they will have to suffer the consequences at some time or other. And this morality, this law of karma is not a punishment. It's a way of teaching you, either individually or collectively, what is the right from the wrong. So, law of karma is that which points you towards the true path and not the wrong path. So, how it will come about, that is difficult to say. But we can also think of the civil war that happened. Okay, they were indulging in slavery, so they had to go through a mass slaughter. And that was not a very pleasant experience for America. No? There is so much of, in fact, it is almost an American Kshatriya, Kurukshetra.
Yes.
So that is what it was.
Yes.
So that is one. But there are other consequences also. In fact, Srimdo says, materialism, takes its revenge afterwards. Because you are not stressing the right values, and there will be effects of that. The effects necessarily will be something that will teach you not to stick to your materialist values. So that is going to happen. In a sense, you can already see that happening in the West. In America, for instance, the slaves were put down. But now, what has happened? A slave was president of America. It was the other way around, Obama. And now also that vice president, she is also half Negro. She is half Indian and half Negro, the black race. So this is a law of karma that comes. The same thing is happening in UK now. UK. I don't know how many people see that, but this is a very interesting phenomenon that has happened with Rishi Sunak. You can see it in two ways. You can see it as the law of karma operating. The English that have dominated the Indians for 200 years, now one of those Indians which has suffered at their hands is sitting at the head of the government. Not that he is going to take revenge or anything, but it's a law of karma operating at a certain interesting way. But there's another way of looking at it, which is positive. My stressing is that the law of karma is not all punishment at all. Okay? The British are taking pride in the fact that they have been able to select someone who is not really British, who is not really a Christian. They are taking pride in that. Because it does show that you are going beyond your very narrow conceptions of what man is. Okay? Going beyond nationalism is already a very progressive attitude. In fact, Sri Aurobindo says, nationalism at the lowest level is nothing but the herd instinct. He says that very clearly. Nationalism at its highest emotional level is fine because it's love. Okay? But at the lower level, the mass reactions of nationalism is nothing but herd instinct. So, when you go beyond your nationalism and your ideas of race and all that, there is something positive in that. So, this is how the British are seeing it, and they're right. Maybe not all are seeing, but those who are seeing, there is a certain element of truth in it.
And what about the breaking up of Europe?
That is a purely mechanical action of nature. There is a destruction and a construction, a destruction and a construction. He has dealt with this question in the Synthesis, the very first chapter. Okay? Where he talks of the synthesis of yoga. Okay? There is constantly in the physical world, there are dualities. That we know, na? Because if you want to know the reason why there are dualities, the one divine becomes the many here. So this is fact. So when the one is becoming the many are covering the whole range of what can be created. So it is going, if you take the image of light, it becomes very interesting. The one light is expressing itself in so many different intensities. It can be 5,000 watts, 10,000 watts, 5 million watts it can be, but it can also be the other way around. It can be 100 watts, 50 watts, 0 watt, and then it can go to the negative side. So this is what the one becoming the many. So the possibility of creation, when it comes down, it can create infinitely, but if the creation also becomes less and less and less, negatively it becomes destruction. So, and this is happening all the time. This is the truth of the threefold reality in Hinduism. Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. Brahma is creating, Shiva is destroying instantaneously, and Vishnu is maintaining. There is a constant destruction and a construction. The destruction we can see in wars, we can see in death, we can see in forest fires, we can see in floods. There is destruction all the time. Tsunamis, but there is also construction. A volcano bursts. It destroys to a certain extent. But the lava goes into the sea and an island is formed. There is creation. And that island, in a very short time, grows trees, birds come in, life comes in. So there is a creation. So this is constantly happening everywhere. So the destruction and construction is part of that. It's a mechanical action at the lower level of the dualities that are operating all the time.
Thank you. So, we'll go.
Let's go to our... I read the whole paragraph and then we'll come back to it. It is typical again of the pragmatic man that it is through his sensations that he awakens to the meaning of his action. He has asked his friend and charioteer to place him between the two armies, not with any profounder idea, but with the proud intention of viewing and looking in the face these myriads of the champions of unrighteousness, whom he has to meet and conquer and slay in this holiday of fight, so that the right may prevail. It is as he gazes that the revelation of the meaning of a civil and domestic war comes home to him. A war in which not only men of the same race, the same nation, the same clan, but those of the same family and household stand upon opposite sides. All whom the social man holds most dear and sacred, he must meet as enemies and slay. The worshipped teacher and preceptor, the old friend, comrade and companion in arms, grandsires, uncles, those who stood in the relation to him of father, of son, of grandson, connections by blood and connections by marriage. All these social ties have to be cut asunder by the sword. It is not that he did not know these things before, but he has never realized it all. Obsessed by his claims and wrongs, and by the principles of his life, the struggle for the right, the duty of the Kshatriya to protect justice and the law and fight, and beat down injustice and lawless violence, he has neither thought out deeply nor felt it in his heart and at the core of his life. And now it is shown to his vision by the divine charioteer, placed sensationally before his eyes, and comes home to him like a blow, delivered at the very center of his sensational, vital and emotional being. So, the whole paragraph is stressing on the practical side of Arjuna, who is not a thinker and not living in his mind, but living more in his sensational parts and is vital, a man of action. So we'll go through each sentence and see if there's anything to be looked at specifically. It is typical again of the pragmatic man. So the pragmatic man, one who is very, very practical in life, okay, that it is through his sensations that he awakens to the meaning of his action. So when he gets something pleasant, sensation, or something unpleasant, he acts on that. He does not act by his thoughts. The thinker will act by the thoughts. He will analyze and look at what his mind is telling him is right or what is telling him is wrong. So he will decide on the basis of his mental decisions, not Arjuna. Arjuna is going to decide by the sensations, Srimad is saying. And sensations are always in the vital and the physical vital. A sensation is when you feel hot and cold, that is sensation. Okay? Srimad is using the word.
Can they be as real as from the mind? As valid?
It is more valid, I think, for the normal man.
I think so, yes.
The thinker is rare. It's not very common.
Yes.
The one who lives in the mind is not very common. In fact, Srimad says that in the synthesis. He says that the mental development has not yet been completed in man. Very few are really objective and seeking the truth objectively. Very few. The mental man is rare. The physical man is the most common. the vital man is less common and the mental man is the least common of all. There is a gradation. So this is what he is stressing, that Arjuna is going to decide on the basis of his sensations, what he feels with his body and his vital. Okay? So, he has asked his friend and charioteer is Sri Krishna, to place him between the two armies, not with any profounder idea, but with the proud intention of viewing and looking in the face these myriads of the champions of unrighteousness, whom he has to meet and conquer and slay in this holiday of fight. Now, in this holiday of fight, we have discussed earlier, but I'll repeat because it was something that puzzled me like anything. And he has put in double quotes. Yes. So what does he mean by that? The Sanskrit, if you go to, it is the word used is samudyama, okay, war, okay. But Srimad is using the word holiday of a fight. So why is he saying that? War can hardly be a holiday. So the idea is, when I read somewhere else, then I understood. I asked many people. No one could really satisfy me as to why is Srimad saying holiday of a fight and in double quotes. But it means that the man, a warrior, takes deep pleasure in his profession. So he enjoys what he's doing. That's why to the Kshatriya, every fight is a holiday. And when an opportunity is given to him, he is the happiest. That's why Srendra is translating as a holiday of a fight. The holiday has an implication of pleasure and even bordering on great happiness. That's what it means.
Almost a holy day.
Well, here it is a holiday. It's true that holidays are maintained usually on holy days. Maybe it has come from there.
Maybe.
Yeah, it has come from there, maybe. A holiday is the observance of a holy day.
Yes.
Okay, so that's it. So that the right may prevail. So, he has asked Arjuna to take him to the center of the two armies, right in the middle, and he wants to see whom he has to fight. Now comes the question of the, what Shamdev will explain, the sensation. Who has he to fight? He has to fight his grandfather. He has to fight Bhishma. Then he sees his own teacher and preceptor. Okay? He has to fight him. What's the name? Dronacharya. He has to fight Dronacharya. Then he has to fight all his in-laws. Okay? All the other kingdoms, they have come there. The father-in-laws, brother-in-laws, all these people are there everywhere. And he has to fight them. Now it strikes him with great force. That's a sensation that comes.
So, not knowing so much, why does he have to fight them?
Oh, to establish the establish the dharma. That's what he's saying here, na? So that the right may prevail. Shiv has answered that already.
That they are the wrong.
Yeah.
They are in the wrong.
Yeah, they are the champions of unrighteousness. They are the champions of unrighteousness. The Kauravas, and that's also interesting, the Pandavas are only 5. But the Kauravas are 100. What is that's also a symbolic thing. Evil is more rampant in the world than virtue. That's what is implied. 100 sons Dhritarashtra has. Okay, so that the right may prevail. Okay. But this right is very interesting because he has to establish the right through violence. Okay. And if it's a violence which is not unpleasant to him, he will accept. But this violence that he's going to do is he's going to kill his own family members, his relatives. So that is unpleasant to him. So he reacts. Okay? So let's see. So the right may prevail. It is as he gazes that the revelation of the meaning of a civil and domestic war comes home to him. A war in which not only men of the same race, the same nation, the same clan, but those of the same family and household stand upon opposite sides. This also you can think of as a symbol. Okay? In you, you have a mind which is, if you are a thinker and sufficiently developed, you are thinking of what is right and wrong. But the vital, which is in the same person, the same family, the same clan, okay, it doesn't agree with the mind. So, this is also symbolic of that. He has to fight his own. When you are doing yoga, you have to fight your own being. You have to fight with the mind and the psychic and the help of the guru. You have to fight that which is wrong in you. So that's again symbolic. The opposite side also is not pure enemy. They are part of you only. It's interesting. So, the same race, same nation, same clan, but those of the same family and household stand upon opposite sides. All whom the social man holds most dear and sacred, he must meet as enemies and slay. And who are they? The worshipped teacher and preceptor, Dronacharya, the old friend, comrade, and compassion in arms. So, grandsires, obviously he is talking of Bhishma, okay? Uncles, I've forgotten the names, but there are many people there with uncles. Those who stood in the relation to him of father, of son, of grandson, connections by blood and connections by marriage. All these social ties have to be cut asunder by the sword. He has to get rid of all these attachments to his own family. That again refers back to our own. We have to deny the lower parts of ourselves. They are part of us, our desires, our likes and dislikes, and all these things. So, but by the way, Srimad is very clear that the Mahabharata and Ramayana are not to be interpreted purely as symbols. They are not to be interpreted purely as symbols. They are also history. He says that. Okay, so, but the element of symbolism is there very clearly, everywhere. The worshipped teacher and preceptor, the old friend, comrade and companion in arms, grandsires, uncles, those who stood in the relation to him of father, of son, of grandson, connections by blood and connections by marriage. All these social ties have to be cut asunder by the sword. It is not that he did not know these things before, but he has never realized it at all. Obsessed by his claims and wrongs and by the principles of his life, the struggle for the right, the duty of the Kshatriya to protect justice and the law and fight and beat down injustice and lawless violence, he has neither thought out deeply nor felt it in his heart and at the core of his life. And now it is shown to his vision by the divine charioteer placed sensationally before his eyes and comes home to him like a blow delivered at the very center of his sensational, vital and emotional being. Okay? So, at three levels he is hit very badly. Sensational. The vital physical is a sensation. When something comes, as I said, hot, cold, pleasant, unpleasant, all these are the sensational part of you. The vital part, okay? Your likes and dislikes, they are the vital part. Emotional part also. Love for your own people, and now you have to start removing that love, okay? Even the emotional part is a higher vital. So, vital physical, vital, and also the emotional part. Everything is affected, but not the mind. That's what Srimad is stressing. Okay? So, this is But Srimati is saying the stress is always on the practical man. And the implication is that the Gita is a guidance for the practical man in life. It's not something theoretical. We read the next para. The first result is a violent, sensational and physical crisis which produces a disgust of the action and its material objects and of life itself. He rejects the vital aim pursued by egoistic humanity in its action, happiness and enjoyment. He rejects the vital aim of the Kshatriya, victory and rule and power and the government of men. What, after all, is this fight for justice when reduced to its practical terms? But just this, a fight for the interests of himself, his brothers and his party, for possession and enjoyment and rule. But at such a cost, these things are not worth having, for they are of no value in themselves, but only as a means to the right maintenance of social and national life. And it is these very aims that in the person of his kin and his race he is about to destroy. And then comes the cry of the emotions. So first of all sensations, then the emotions. These are they for whose sake life and happiness are desired. Our own people. Okay? Own people, he is putting in double quotes because it's from the Gita. Okay? Swajana. Okay? Our own people. Who would consent to slay these for the sake of all the earth, or even for the kingdoms of the three worlds? What pleasure can there be in life? What happiness, what satisfaction in oneself after such a deed? The whole thing is a dreadful sin, for now the moral sense awakens to justify the revolt and the sensations and the emotions. It's a sin. There is no right nor justice in mutual slaughter. Especially are those who are to be slain the natural objects of reverence and of love, those without whom one would not care to live. And to violate these sacred feelings can be no virtue, can be nothing but a heinous crime. Granted that the offense, the aggression, the first sin, the crimes of greed and selfish passion which have brought things to such a pass came from the other side, yet armed resistance to wrong under such circumstances would be itself a sin and crime worse than theirs, because they are blinded by passion and unconscious of guilt. While on this side, it would be with a clear sense of guilt that the sin would be committed. And for what? For the maintenance of family morality, of the social law and the law of the nation. These are the very standards that will be destroyed by this civil war. This family itself will be brought to the point of annihilation. Corruption of morals and loss of the purity of race will be engendered. The eternal laws of the race and the moral law of the family will be destroyed. Ruin of the race, the collapse of its high traditions, ethical degradation and hell for the authors of such a crime, these are the only practical results possible of this monstrous civil strife. All this Arjuna is thinking. Therefore, cries Arjuna, casting down the divine bow and inexhaustible quiver given to him by the gods for that tremendous hour, it is more for my welfare that the sons of Dhritarashtra, armed, should slay me unarmed and unresisting. I will not fight. Okay? So, he has now completely changed and forgotten his Kshatriya ideals, and now he says that the very principles which I held sacred are now, I am rejecting them. I can't manage. Why? Because of his sensational, vital and emotional being. And the reasoning Srimad is described here, first of all the sensational reasoning, then the vital reasoning, and then the emotional reasoning. On all the three levels, he is finding it impossible to do what he has to do. So we look at it, it's very interesting because there are a lot of discussions possible. Okay? So, to fight wrong, for instance, there is a very interesting, we'll have to discuss that. To fight wrong, can I use violence? There are some people who say, no, you can't use violence. Use non-violent methods, Gandhi. Srimad doesn't agree. He says that if there is something and you have to use violence to protect yourself or to do the right thing, do it. But the violence must be free of hate and anger. It must be a violence which is absolutely calm and considered and neutral. No sense of hate or enemy should come into the violence. That is acceptable. It is not so for others, as Gandhi, for instance. Very interesting question. We'll discuss that. Okay? So, the first result is a violent, sensational and physical crisis which produces a disgust of the action and its material objects and of life itself. So Srimad is very clear that it is a physical and vital reaction, because in the Gita it's very clear that his bow drops from his hand and his hands are trembling, they are shaking, and there is a feverishness in him. So it's absolutely physical reaction, sensational. It's not mental. The mental arguments come later on. Okay? So he has used these three words, sensational, vital and emotional. He is developing that now, how it is for Arjuna. Okay? So, a disgust of the action and its material objects and of life itself. Earlier he did not mind, but now when he has to kill his own people, then the enormity of the task that he has to do strikes him with force.
And he reacts against it.
Yes, huh?
He reacts against it.
Yes, absolutely. He refuses to fight. Finally, after all this description, he says, I will not fight. Okay. So, the first result is a violent, sensational, and physical crisis, which produces a disgust of the action and its material objects and of life itself. So, life is itself. Such a life is not acceptable to me. I don't want this life. Okay. He rejects the vital aim. Now, Srimad is coming from sensational to vital, which he has already. You can see here how Srimad's prose develops a sort of Unitarian structure in his prose. He just doesn't use these three words and leaves it at that. He is developing that. The sensational, vital and emotional. And now this para, he is going to develop these three words. So you can see how his structure is there, and this is also there. We are now seeing only three words and the para. But if you see, he goes chapter by chapter. In synthesis also he refers to what he has said in chapter 2, chapter 3. He will certainly go back to it with implications in chapter 10, 12, 13, 14. Okay? It's very interesting. In fact, my mathematics teacher, he was a brilliant man, Venkatraman. He used to come from Madurai, and he was an enthusiast. He was a mathematics teacher. But his side interests were yoga, Sanskrit, okay, and philosophy. Okay? And he was a brilliant man. He used to correct mathematical PhD papers from all over the world. Okay? And he used to come from Madurai every day and teach us mathematics in ashram, and then go back to Madurai. So he used to say, most people write sentence by sentence. Some people write paragraph by paragraph. Sri Aurobindo writes chapter by chapter. So now you can see what is meaning. So, there is a Unitarian structure in his prose. It's fantastic. So, the first is violent, sensational and physical crisis produces a disgust and the material objects. Now he comes to the vital part. He rejects the vital aim pursued by egoistic humanity in its action. When you are in the egoistic consciousness, you don't mind fighting your enemy to get your own benefits. You fight. Normally you do that. Okay. So, and what is the purpose of the vital aim in life? Happiness and enjoyment. Whatever you want happiness and enjoyment. That comes first. Okay. So, he rejects the vital aim of the Kshatriya. So, not only the social vital aim, but also the Kshatriya vital aim. And what is that? Victory and rule and power and the government of men. This is the function of the Kshatriya. Victory and rule and power and government of men. Okay, that also he is rejecting. Okay. What after all is this fight for justice when reduced to its practical terms? But just this, a fight for the interests of himself, his brothers and his party, for possession and enjoyment and rule. But at such a cost, these things are not worth having. For they are of no value in themselves, but only as a means to the right maintenance of social and national life, and it is these very aims that in the person of his kin and his race he is about to destroy. Mind you, this is not Sri Aurobindo speaking. He is just telling you what Arjuna is saying. Okay, this is another thing that we must be very careful about in Sri Aurobindo's prose. He puts, without putting double quotes and all that, he is now describing what Arjuna is thinking. So Sri Aurobindo is not saying all this. Okay, we must be very careful. Many people misquote. Here it's very obvious that it is Arjuna's thinking. But in Life Divine, he often states the opposition view. And then he comes to the next paragraph and destroys it. So one has to be very careful. It sounds as though Sri Aurobindo is saying all those things, but he is not. Okay, so. For they are of no value in themselves, but only as a means for the right maintenance of social and national life. Now, this also we will discuss a little in detail. So, when you are doing something in the physical world, it is for the right maintenance of social and national life. Most people think like that what you do should be of use to society and your nation. Valid in itself, but is that only that? The ultimate aim of man is to work for the divine and not for nation or society. So, you see, there is a gradation. So, this is not Sri Aurobindo's thinking, it is Arjuna's thinking. I have to do good for society and my nation. And when I am doing that, how can I do good for my nation when I am killing the cream of society? I can't do that. Okay? For they are of no value in themselves, but only as a means for the right maintenance of social and national life. And it is these very aims that in the person of his kin and his race, he is about to destroy. So I can't accept that. And then comes the cry of the emotions. So now, the emotional part, okay, he's coming back to sensational, vital and emotional. So now he's talking about the emotions. You can see the structure, how he is working out. These are they for whose sake life and happiness are desired. Our own people. 90% of the time, when we are working in the physical world, the normal man, he is working for himself a little bit, but also for his own children and his own wife and his own family. Okay? So, that's what normally happens. But if you are going to destroy your very family, how are you working for them? That's his argument. So, these are they for whose sake life and happiness are desired, our own people. Who would consent to slay these, those who are precious to me, for the sake of all the earth? Even if you give me the whole earth, I will not accept it, okay? Or even for the kingdom of the three worlds. The three worlds are the normal, the physical world, the subtle world, and the causal world. Bhu, Bhuvar, Swar. It comprises the whole of creation. The physical world, the subtle world, and the causal world. This is very often you speak of that because it means everything. Even if you give me everything, I won't fight. It's not worth it. Okay, that's what I say. Kingdom of three worlds. But what pleasure can there be in life? What happiness? What satisfaction in oneself after such a deed? The whole thing is a dreadful sin. For now, the moral sense awakens to justify the revolt of the sensations and the emotions. And now, his mind is coming into play, the moral sense. So you can see the gradation, how Srimda is developing. First of all, sensationally he is hit. Then he rejects. Then there is a vital reasoning. Then there is a emotional reasoning. Now he comes to the moral sense. Even that he is finding fault with. But Sri Krishna will tell him, all your arguments are all wrong, false. He will tell him afterwards. Okay, so the whole thing is a dreadful sin. For now, the moral sense awakens to justify the revolt of the sensations and the emotions. You can see also he is again repeating the same thing that he said earlier. Sensations and then emotions. It's a sin. There is no right nor justice in mutual slaughter. Okay? Mutual slaughter. Not the slaughter of the enemy. But the enemy happens to be my own people. So mutual slaughter. Especially are those who are to be slain the natural objects of reverence and of love. Reverence, Dronacharya, his own teacher. And love. By the way, Dronacharya was his teacher for archery. Okay? So, he was his preceptor and he was also his teacher. His guru for the use of arms. Okay? And love. He's talking of Bhishma. Okay? And also his relatives, in-laws and all. Those without whom one would not care to live. Okay? They are the ones who are to be worshipped. And to violate these sacred feelings can be no virtue, can be nothing but a heinous crime. So, is this absolutely right? At his level, okay. But at a higher level in the spiritual field, even your family members, love is acceptable, but not attachment. Certainly love is, in fact, love should be extended even to your enemies. But attachment is not. So attachment will bring suffering. So that's what is being stressed here. Okay, so you don't care to live by killing your own people. It's a sin. There is no right nor justice in mutual slaughter. Especially are those who are to be slain, the natural objects of reverence and of love, those without whom one would not care to live. And to violate these sacred feelings can be no virtue, can be nothing but a heinous crime. Disgusting crime. Granted that the offense, the aggression, the first sin, the crimes of greed and selfish passion, which have brought things to such a pass, came from the other side. It is the Kauravas, the enemies who have started the thing first. They are the ones who went wrong. Agreed. Yet, armed resistance to wrong under such circumstances would be itself a sin and crime worse than theirs, because they are blinded by passion and unconscious of guilt, while on this side it would be with a clear sense of guilt that the sin would be committed. This is what we were discussing, and it's interesting. Are you justified in fighting wrong with violence? That's a question being asked. And Arjuna is saying, no. I can't use violence even against something wrong. That was Gandhi's stand. Nah? So, I will fight the British, they are doing something wrong. But I will fight them not with violence, but with non-violent means. And so there is a very interesting description in the essays on the Gita itself. But when you are doing that, is it not a subtler violence? It's a very interesting question. Okay, when you are doing non-resistance, it's a violence. It's not a physical violence, but it can be a vital violence and a mental violence. You are opposing. Then, and Sri Aurobindo says afterwards, not here, but he says that sometimes can have a more disastrous effect than a physical violence. He says that. Yeah, very interesting. So we'll see that. Okay, so here he's saying, Arjuna is saying, I will not use violence against even something when it is wrong. Okay, so granted that the offense, the aggression, the first sin, crimes of greed and self-passion, which have brought things to such a pass, came from the other side. Yet, armed resistance to wrong under such circumstances would be itself a sin, and crime worse than theirs, because they are blinded by passion and unconscious of guilt, while on this side, it would be with a clear sense of guilt that the sin would be committed. But it is possible to use violence without any sense of guilt. That's the whole point. But he's saying, if I know that I'm going to fight these and I'm going to kill my own people, I will feel guilty that I am doing something which is not right. But you can act without a sense of guilt. It's very interesting. When the Allies were fighting Germany, okay, they certainly thought that they are doing the right thing. Okay? But at an individual level, there can be, this doubt can come in. It's very interesting. I just mentioned, without going too much into detail, but mother says about herself, she says, I never had the sense of guilt in anything. Very interesting. It's got a lot of implications. I won't go too much into that, but she says that in one place. I never had the sense that I am doing something wrong. Even with others may consider wrong, but she will never feel that like that. She says, I never had the sense of guilt.
But she's the Divine Mother.
No, that's right. No. So, but she is human also. She is an avatar and she is human. There is a divine element in her, but also a human element. She has a body. She has a vital and a mind, which is being transformed. So that which is possible to the avatar is also possible for man. Not immediately, but later. He can develop that. So this is a very interesting thing that is being saying. In fact, Gandhi went so far as to say, in court, he said, I am going to fight your laws. Okay? He told the judge. And if you think that I am doing something wrong, you are fully justified in punishing me. Please punish me to the maximum extent. He went that far. Okay? So it sounds very wonderful. It sounds, my God, what courage. Okay? But it's not necessarily right.
Well, they say that if this had happened in communist Russia, the train would have run right over him. It didn't in India because of the Indian consciousness.
Yeah. So this idea that violence is essentially wrong is not correct spiritually. It is wrong when it is used for the wrong purpose with anger and hatred and a negative attitude. Otherwise, violence is perfectly okay. You can use dynamite for a wrong purpose, but you can use dynamite also for a good purpose. Okay? I want to build a dam, so I am doing it for the good of something. So violence can be used for both ways. Just like a knife, it can cut. But it can cut for your benefit, it can also cut for your own harm. So that's the thing. Okay, so it's a very interesting question. But this is all Arjuna's argument. All right, so with a clear sense of guilt that the sin would be committed. And for what? What would, even if I fought the wrong and the evil with violence, what will I achieve? For the maintenance of family morality? of the social law and the law of the nation. These are the very standards that will be destroyed by this civil war. So now his mind is coming into the picture and he is giving consequences of what will happen if I do this. The family itself will be brought to the point of annihilation. Corruption of morals and loss of the purity of race will be engendered. The eternal laws of the race and moral law of the family will be destroyed. So, they are more specific in the Gita. Srimad is not going into too many details. But when there is war, there is a lot of violence against women. And there is a mixture of races and a mixture of all these type of things. The purity of the race gets affected. So, that is also specifically mentioned that the women become corrupt. They are rather not become corrupt, but they are corrupted by force. Yeah. So that's what he's saying. This will happen. That's what Arjuna is arguing now. Okay, so the race will be engendered. The eternal laws of the race and moral law of the family will be destroyed. Ruin of the race, the collapse of high traditions, ethical degradation, and hell for the authors of such a crime. These are the only practical results possible for this monstrous civil strife. Therefore, cries Arjuna, casting down the divine bow and the inexhaustible quiver given to him by the gods for that tremendous hour. So, it is more for my welfare that the sons of Dhritarashtra, armed, should slay me unarmed, and unresisting I will not fight. Let them with arms kill me, I will not use my arms. That's better than me doing something wrong. So, I will not fight. Na yotsye, I will not fight.
And these are modern moralistic principles.
Yes. These are moralistic, and morals, you can go beyond morals to a higher standard. That's the whole point. When you go to the self, when you quieten your mind and you go to the self, you see that morality is fine at the mental level, but it's not valid anymore at the spiritual level. Because good and bad, good and evil, hot and cold are all on the same level. They are not different, which we discussed in the beginning of this session. Na? Darkness and light are the same. They are not different.
Aspects of each other.
Aspects of the same vibrational length. So, very interesting paragraph and lot of implications, and we went into them. It's very interesting. So, apply the Gita to yourself also at the physical level. It's not only theory. And how to act, that will come in the later chapters. How to develop samatha, how to develop your consciousness, what is to be done, what is not to be done, all that comes later. 18 chapters.
Thank you, Ram.
We stop here today.
Thank you. Namaste. Namaste.